And we're back on the What Podcast. I'm Barry. That's Lord Taco. And with us, Bryan Stone. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing good.
I'm so excited. I'm so happy about this. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to bring back one of my favorite bits on the show, Bonnaroulette. We're going to play that in a little bit. Bryan, it's going to be a little bit new to you. But it helps kind of ground this whole show. The reason we started this show back in 2018, we didn't think the lineup was full of a lot of bands that we were familiar with. So we thought, how can we make ourselves familiar with acts that are on the lineup and have some fun with it? And my co-host at the time, Brad Steiner, came up with Bonnaroulette. We spin the wheel, we land on an act that we've never heard of, and then we go do a little research. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah,
It's a
and
lot of fun, right?
For the first 10 years of this festival or so, maybe closer to 10 and a decade and a half, I knew so much of every lineup. And then that's probably about the time frame for 17, 16 or well, maybe 16, 17, 18. It was like, okay, now I'm getting older. Now I don't know what all this stuff is. And it's gotten more and more that way. That's just the evolution of the music industry and where the festival is. So it's been fun to take a little bit of a, I won't say deep dive, but a little bit of a shallow end wading pool, wading in the waters.
Yeah. And to me, that's been the transition probably at the core of why we like this festival and festivals in general. And I'm old. We're going to get into that in a minute. But to me, it's the discovery. That's the thing that this festival has changed about music is used to be, if you didn't know who the band was, you didn't go. You wouldn't buy a ticket. You wouldn't spend the money. And now it's like, man, I want to go find somebody I've never heard of. Right. And that's the big thing. So, just real quick, a little bit about all of us, part of the fun, because if you're new to this show and you're new to the festival, I assume you have no clue why you should care. Um, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Russ with the bus, he will park his VW Westphalia anywhere, anytime, anyhow, doesn't care,
That's
right?
right.
Russ is the easiest going guy.
I'm in it right now.
Shows up on Tuesday. Yeah, shows up on a Tuesday on the farm in Manchester.
He records the damn podcast in it. For crying
doesn't
out loud.
care who's on the lineup, right?
No, really don't. And I think one year, maybe I've always thought about this. How long can you really physically stay there on the farm? At what point do they just come up to you and be like, it's time to leave? Because, we always stay till Monday, or at least I do. What if you stayed till Tuesday? What if you stayed
if
till
you
Wednesday?
don't know the answer to this, nobody
I don't,
does.
but I kind of want to find out. Like, just maybe hit the stopwatch and then just wait and see how long until somebody, picking up trash or something comes by and is like, dude, what are you doing here? Or, it's time to leave.
Yeah,
like
we joked last year. You're like, I'll lock up.
Yeah.
I'll close the gate.
Yeah, I'll turn the lights out. Don't worry, I got it.
I'll turn the lights out. Russ is an easy get along guy. Bryan is the guy that if Eddie Vedder isn't playing, he ain't going. He will also sit in the car and listen to Pearl Jam while Paul McCartney's playing.
Well, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but you're not far off. There was the year that I sat in the car listening to the Shins for like 5 hours a day, and then once the Shin show was there on Sunday, I was like, yeah, I'm done with
it. Bryan will go on a walkabout and miss the music. I'm the guy that'll be like, I'm gonna go see it and walk by and then think I've got a comfortable chair back at camp, so I'm gonna go sit in camp. So, but we're all veterans of Bonnaroo. I've been there since the beginning. Missed 3 or 4 years. Bryan, you've been there every year. Russ, you started in 2018. So we're big time fans of this festival. We have different tastes, and that's part of the fun, but we love everything about it, right? I mean,
Yeah, and what I like about this idea for the show today, which again I know you guys have done in the past, I've always been a semi contributor and lurker to the show, so I'm familiar with it. But what I like about it is that Bonnaroo has always been known for since the jump of music discovery, and I'm not that big on going to see music that I've never heard before. I'm just
right.
I'm just not that I'm maybe call that stubborn, whatever the word would be. Hey, you got to go see this band; they're great. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure, great. I'm sure you can say that about everybody here right now. If I'm not familiar with it, then I'm not generally going to be as interested in seeing it. Now, that's not been true in every single instance in my life, but most of the time. But give me a taste, give me a dose, and then you might have hooked me. And that's what something like this really helps with.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And that's again, it goes back to what I'm saying that there are different types of fans. Do you go because so and your favorite band is on the lineup, or do you go because like I lo- I've said it 100 times. My new favorite band on Sunday morning when we're cleaning the house is Bahamas. I had no
Okay.
clue who
Yeah.
Hmm.
Bahamas was.
I wouldn't know the name if it wasn't for
I
Bonnaroo.
know, walked up on that, literally walked up and just fell in love with his music and came home, and that's what I listen to on Sunday morning. It's mellow, it's nice. Had no clue, right? What are you laughing at, Russ?
Just
You remember the
I don't know. I don't know the band, but just to your point, even if you're not familiar with who they are, you might just walk up. You know that there's some reason that somebody decided to put them on a stage at Bonnaroo, and whether it's your
great
taste
point?
or not, you know that there's a reason. You know.
Yeah, Warren Treaty. I
Hmm.
mean, there's so many that I can reel off bands that I'd never heard of, no clue that are now, go tos for me. And that to me is the value of this festival and any festival. I mean, I want to see the bands that I'm familiar with. I want to see my favorites. I mentioned Paul McCartney, obviously. That was the seminal moment in my life. Um, but I love the Bahamas the show just as much because I didn't see that coming,
Hmm.
and it's become a go-to. So that's kind of the point of this show, this Bonnaroulette, which again give full credit to Brad Steiner for coming up with it. I think it's a great title and a great bit, whatever. So um just to explain, we don't have copyright, so we can't play the music. So we're going to spin a wheel and we're going to land on we all sort of picked a bunch of names of acts that we'd never heard of, right?
Yep.
On purpose. That's the whole point. I mean, no point in doing Red Hot Chili Peppers. We know what Red Hot Chili Peppers are and
Yep.
whoever. So we picked a bunch of names that we've never heard of, and we're going to
And there's
land
a
on it.
lot to choose from this year. A
Sure
lot.
is.
That's a great point. That's why we wanted to bring this
Hmm.
back, because
Perfect
that's why
timing.
we started this in 2018. Brad and I were sitting in a restaurant at lunch, and like I don't know 80% of the bands on this lineup, and this year is probably the same. So I think we're going to do it a couple of times, right? Not just today. We may do it again a couple of weeks from now or whatever,
Yeah, there's
because
there's
there's so
plenty.
much that we
Yeah,
don't
there's plenty to
know.
pick from.
All right, so here we go. Russ, you're going to spin the wheel and we're going to see where it
Hmm.
lands. And then we're going to, in theory, go away and listen to this music. And then we're going to come back and talk about it. I don't know any other way to do it. Do you?
Best way to do
All
it.
right,
Yeah.
here.
Spin the wheel,
Spin
Russ.
Spin
the
it.
wheel. All right.
All right, and landed on Geese.
Geese.
What do you guys know about Geese?
Geese. Oh, what a great place to start.
So you're telling me this is not Goose?
No. And funny
No.
thing
Go ahead,
about
Barry.
that, there are two different bands called Goose, and I know this because I tried to get them if you guys will remember back during the pandemic when Bonnaroo did the digital
Mhm.
show, Goose
Yeah,
crushed.
that was a
It
standout
was
act.
absolutely crushed. And I reached out to get them on our show. Well, there's a band in Europe called Goose, not the same. I got an
Well,
I got an email back. But
where
anyway,
where we're starting there with Goose, I'm glad or Geese, and then
Geese.
bringing up Goose to begin with is because my first thought was, well, there's already a ridiculously stupid band named Goose. Do we really need to have a band called
The poor
Geese? Clearly somebody thought that was a good idea. Experimental rock out of Orange County. Um, First impressions are solid. Uh, I don't know where they are in the lineup, but it's got to be. Yeah, they're on Thursday. 818,000 listens on monthly listens on Spotify. Which, if you didn't know any better, you think that sounds like a lot.
Mhm.
Not compared to most anybody we're going to be potentially talking about
Right.
today. So
Right.
they are still a very up and coming band, and and Barry, you'll appreciate this. This is why I was hoping we would eventually get to this. Rolling Stone is quoted as saying, "You can hear New York City guitar zone out Zen masters like television." And then had like three or four other 80s, 70s, 80s and punk and inspired bands. That's
Yep.
Rolling Stone said that, not
Yep.
me or
I'm
their
glad
best
you I'm
or not.
glad you mentioned that, and
Yeah,
because it's a great opportunity for me to completely name drop. See the poster behind me? Frank Zappa?
I
That was
do.
given to me by none other than Richard Lloyd, the guitar player for television,
Oh, wow.
who
Who now
happens
lives
to
here
live
in our
here
fair city?
in Chattanooga. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that should draw attention to a lot of people. I mean, anybody that gets compared to television draws my attention. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, not
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 just
not a many people of certain younger ages are going to have heard of that
no.
band, but anybody who is, middle age and above that
Yeah,
has
Marquis.
any interest in experimental punk,
Yeah, Marquis.
transitional rock punk, they're
That's
familiar with the
right.
band Television, and so that's pretty cool. They played Coachella last year. Geese did, and so they are Orange County, so that's easy pickings for Coachella to choose from. But
Yeah.
so they're that resume is slowly building, and with a Thursday slot, that's what that's for. And you never know, maybe Geese and Goose will be the headline co-bill act of 2026. We'll see.
When you're saying that, so television Marquee Moon is I think coming up on an anniversary. I know Rhino is going to re-release that's television's album. That's literally changed music a bit. Um, the point being, I think you said it earlier, Brian. We kind of have to trust Bryan and Steven who book Bonnaroo. They know what they're doing,
Mhm.
right? That's again goes back to I've never heard of them, but these guys have. So maybe not my taste, maybe not my thing, and we're gonna get into that again as we go through this.
Well, and I think the festival as a whole, and it's over all the years and all the shows recently, we've talked about the changes. One thing that's never really changed is that if you paid attention at all, if you're a regular, if you're just wearing a one off or industry types like we all have been, the trust factor was the biggest thing from the
Yeah,
jump
exactly.
point, and they gained it so quickly. And then when they went away from the jam thing and transitioned, a lot of people lost a lot of trust, a lot of those originals, but they quickly built that right back up in a different way. And
Yeah,
trust has always been a factor, and if you don't trust what they're doing, you just don't like this kind of stuff, right? Like, so they layer it right. You guys have done shows discussing the entire philosophy for how this is done. If you missed that episode, that's a great rundown look at how this is strategically done And if they think it's a good idea, it probably is.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's my point. And Bryan and Steven, just to bring it around, those are the guys with AC Entertainment now. C3 Presents, Live Nation. They've been booking this festival forever, and it's not an accident. Um, they don't book bands, and you can go back to our episodes and Taco, you can put the link in.
Mhm.
It's not an accident. They work year round. They work years in advance. They're already thinking about who they might book 2 years from now. So yeah,
It's
it's
really
it's
pretty
not.
pretty fascinating
It's
process.
I think it's amazing,
That
and they're
that
good at it.
that Coachella, I'm sure, has the same formula to a certain degree. Other long-term festivals worldwide, like Glastonbury and places like that, I think they probably have similar philosophies. And to find these bands, which a lot of us would consider niche, that are not, they're a little bit more than niche. It's just because you haven't heard of them, you think, oh, that's just some niche band that only a select few like.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, we
I
talked.
don't know. Let's look at the numbers on Spotify. It shows it's more
Yeah,
than
yeah,
just a niche.
exactly. It's not just because they got 55 bazillion. It's how does it fit in the lane, as we talk about. How
Yeah.
does this band fit with the ones before them and the one after? The one after Brian Benson, Steve Green are the two that we're talking about. All right, so let's go. We ready to spin the wheel again?
Let's spin it.
Spin the wheel.
Half Moon Run. Never heard of.
Sounds like a trail race coming up this week on Lookout Mountain, right?
It does. Yeah, what's the benefit? It's
some
the
kind
charity.
Of some kind of road race downtown. A lot of runners
All right.
around here for those of you who aren't local, but
I got to be honest with this one. I listened to them and immediately hated it. Hated it.
I don't know if I'm going to go so far to say hate, but it didn't jump off the page of anything that I was going to be probably enamored with for any length of time. The only quick thoughts when I did just a quick who is this band? They're a 3-piece Canadians. They're out of Montreal.
Yep.
And you always wonder, just because you have a 3-piece band, where does all this come? Where do all these sounds come from? Sometimes, especially Nashville, the Nashville-based music scene, you got a 3-piece band, but you got like 15 people behind you, studio musicians playing to make all those sounds. So I'm not sure how Half Moon Run does it, but there's a lot of sound, and I don't mean noise in a bad way. There's a lot of noise. It's very blended. And with only 3 guys doing it, excuse me if there might be a female member in the band, but a lot of sounds from just 3 people from Montreal.
Well, I've got notes. My first thought was they take themselves way too seriously. It was just too precious, and so much so that
Precious. I like that.
I know, right?
Precious.
That goes back. I did an interview with Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze, and I was like, "What happened after you guys, wrote those hits?" And he said, "Every word became too precious," and I've never forgotten that. So that was my immediate reaction, and so I felt bad at my reaction. So I went back and I listened again. I don't hate it. It's good. It's not my thing, and maybe it was just that initial reaction. It's good stuff, but I get what you're I get what you're saying. It's
a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Music that's not designed and curated for the general public is complicated. And it's not a listen to it once or twice and like, oh, I got it. I get this.
Yeah.
You've got to give it a few spins. Sometimes that's what annoys me with a lot of indie stuff. And that's what makes it great to the people who love it, is that it's not that. And that's why I like a lot of that stuff too. But it's real easy to be like, all right, yeah, I don't know about this one. But my first thought was I don't love it either. 1.1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. So
somebody likes it.
That's a,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good number for a band who is on Friday, all the way down in the bottom line of Friday. So they're going to be on this or that tent at like noon or something like that on a Friday.
Well,
That
sometimes bands that you listen to their studio stuff, they sound completely different live. And if it's just a three piece, maybe it's just the three of them on stage. Maybe it's a different outcome when it's just played live.
and they might loop some of that stuff with the bands that
Mhm.
loop so much these days, which I am a fan of. I think the looping technology of which is not like a new way of making music, but it's still only done by a select few. It's a very difficult thing to do. Maybe they loop some stuff too. So I do believe, based on the way that it sounds, that watching it live could bring out a completely different
Sometimes it
thought
does. Yeah. Yeah.
process. Very well could be.
And I've said this many, many times. I'm only recently a lyrics guy. I was always about the hook. I mean,
Really?
oh God,
Just recently,
Hmm.
huh?
6-7 years.
Man,
Yeah.
I've always been, that's been a big part with me. And I think part of it is because I'm such a bad poet. Like songwriting, which I believe is just a version of poetry. I'm not
100%.
I'm not good at it. And when I hear it, when I see it, it really it's
No,
always
man.
been something big for me.
My whole life, I could probably go through my whole life and tell you the songs that I love and could not tell you what they're about. I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's
Well, I'm not
all
trying to
about
be pretentious about it. Like I've got the meaning of
no,
life
I
out of
get it.
every song.
I get it.
So Van Halen's "Jump." Did you like it at first and then realize it was the worst lyrics ever?
Yeah, or the better example is
Go ahead and jump.
Scissor Sisters, I think, Whole New Way of Loving You. I recommended my daughter when she was in high school that she should play that as part of her soccer team's warm-up music. And she was like, "Good God, do you know what that's about?"
There's some good
I was like,
TikTok accounts.
"Oh, Jesus Christ."
There's some good TikTok accounts where it's like somebody or listening to some songs like, "Hey, I want to show you kids what I used to listen to," and then they play the lyrics, and he's like, "Oh no, turn it off, turn it off." I can't give you a good
I'm
example,
kidding.
but it's like a song about suicide or something, and it's
Yeah,
like the whole time
exactly.
he's been humming along like he's going to a family picnic. So I get that. I totally get that. It is remarkable to me too, though, Barry, to speak to the lyrics and whether they mean something or
It's
not.
like Afternoon
I'll
Delight.
still listen. Exactly. I'll listen to songs that I've known for 30 years, and then for some reason run across the lyrics while I'm looking. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what they're saying. And I don't mean like "excuse me while I kiss this guy" kind of
Yeah,
stuff. I
exactly.
mean
Not like
just like
misheard. Yeah.
No.
I thought they were saying something totally different for 30 years. And so anyway.
Yeah, no. So my point being, I did not dive deep enough into their music to know that, maybe why it resonates with so many millions of people. I just know when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that's just a little too precious. And then I went back and I liked it. So I get it. So, all right, what's the next one? Let's do it a couple more
All right,
times.
let's spin the wheel.
This is maybe one of my favorite band names. And God loved bands. I can't imagine the challenge of trying to come up with a band name. But Cigarettes After Sex.
I was hoping that's where we were
Yeah.
landing next.
That's pretty funny.
That's a
I mean,
great band name. And on my podcast, over the years, I haven't done it in a while. It's not really a bit, but a I can't remember what I call it. The Bryan Stone Band Naming Institute of Technology. Like, come to me, I will help you make a better band name than Geese, or something like that. It's all a joke. I can't come up with a better band name, but there are so many stupid bad band names. And in my experience into the last 15, 20 years of technology innovation, if you don't have an easily searchable band name, I don't know who your artist management is. I don't know who's advising you, but like, man, that's just a recipe to never be found, as the ocean that the internet is. But cigarettes after sex, I
It's a good
mean,
one.
it's a little provocative. It's a little like, what is that? You know, the 1980s moms would be like, oh no. But I think
Are they
I think
upset about the sex part of the cigarette?
I don't. They don't know. They don't know what they're mad about. I think it's a brilliant brand name.
Me too.
I
band
think it's
name.
hilarious. But we talked about this before. We've had bands like, they picked a name and we're like, "Are you happy with that?" And they're like, "We thought it was a one-off, and it stuck." I can't think of who, Russ. I mean,
I've
I'm
talked
sure
to so many bands that have
Yeah.
that same story. That is a very typical story. Is like, it's not what
Yeah.
we planned on, but eventually that's just what happened. And once you get any recognition at all, you don't really want to change it unless you've got like Diarrhea Planet from Nashville.
Diarrhea Planet, Nashville Pussy. You can never put that in the paper.
What are you doing?
You can't put that. I know, right?
What are you doing?
Exactly.
And Diarrhea Planet had a good career. They had the reunion at Bonnaroo, I believe, just last year. They had a remarkable run, and they would play Chattanooga here in little rinky-dinky shows 15 years ago, and I never got to meet the guys, and I didn't want to insult them as just some guy at the show, but I'm like, what in the hell is the matter with you?
And you also don't want to pick a name that you have to explain
Yeah.
over and over and over. Like even My Morning Jacket. I've seen interviews with those guys where, dumb doofuses like me in the media are like, "Where'd you get that name?" And I'm like, really? Again?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna name yourself something, especially the 3-word thing, which started probably in the night. Well, I don't know, 3 Dog Night. It probably started in the 50s, whenever it started. That 3 name thing. Sometimes it's like, if you're gonna name yourself something a little bit mysterious, you're gonna get asked dumb questions like, "What is My Morning Jacket? Did you have a jacket? Did you wear it in the morning? I mean, was it ironic because you wore it in the evening?"
Yeah, are you the Beatles because of the Crickets? Buddy Holly, is funny and beat, B-E-A-T. So yeah, you got to be very careful about picking. But
we talked
huge. We'll get back to cigarettes after sex.
They're good.
They're monsters.
Yeah,
they are really popular. I had no clue. Of anybody we've even threw out there as suggestions to look at for today as we continue to dig towards the bottom of the list. They're not towards the bottom, but none of us had heard of them, or at least weren't familiar other than maybe heard that name.
Just heard the name.
They've got 6-7 times more the monthly listeners on Spotify than anybody else will be talking about on this show in this capacity. Almost 25 million monthly listeners, which is nothing. That is everything. That is huge.
It's a lot of cigarettes and a lot of sex.
A lot of sex and cigarettes.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. What do the fans call them? I mean,
that's a good question.
Do you say we're going to go see cigarettes after sex? Or
like you got like what's the way they abbreviate?
Yeah, what's the short? Yeah,
exactly.
I got nothing.
Cigs. Who knows?
Yeah. You going to the Sig show? I don't know.
I don't know. It's very sleepy. It's very trance inducing. Almost a I was thinking of this last night and I wondered if it would go over well depending on the demographic of the listeners, but it's almost like a cross between War on Drugs and old Mazzy Star from the 1990s. It's got that kind of just we're just listening to the, I mean, I don't mean bad, good. I'm just saying it's tranquility everywhere, dreamlike sequence style stuff. I first heard one of their songs on TikTok. Heavenly is the name of it, and it is since on my Spotify list. I love it. I love it. But I could totally see someone saying, man, did I come here to take a nap? I mean, is this the field where I have enough room to lay down and snooze for? And I literally don't mean that joking, like, because oftentimes people find time to take naps.
Kind of the first 3 bands that we talked about are a little bit that way. Is that a thing this year? Are the sleepy bands a thing? I know there's a bunch of EDM. I mean, am I reading too much? But
Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean,
is
I'm
that
on, I talk about it a lot here locally that pains my soul. Rock and roll is
100%,
dead. It's dead. I
100%?
mean, just good old fashioned rock and roll is still got its niche. That's where we're at. It's niche. I love good rock and roll. Well, then you're in that corner over there, buddy. And
Yeah,
that sucks. So maybe because like the war on drugs are not, I mean, they're a rock band. Barely. I mean, they really are a sleepy band that I happen to love. But yeah, I think that might be a little bit of a trend. We'll see as I'm a long ways away from knowing for sure.
yeah. All right. Let's spin it
Spin
again.
the wheel.
All right, another one that I've never heard of, and I hope I'm saying it right. Teezo Touchdown.
Yeah,
Y'all
that's
have a
how I
clue?
read it.
Y'all have a clue about this?
I thought it was a typo at first.
I think the whole lineup looks like that.
I know. Who's typing this thing out?
I think I remember in 20. It's funny you say that. 2018. Brad and I we did this show. I was so afraid to say names because I was gonna get them wrong.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I'm terrible at that.
But this is a little more urban. I wouldn't say EDM. It's rap.
It's
right?
rap. It's he's, if I remember right, I was just glancing a minute ago. 23, 24, 25, young guy, has been featured on Tyler the Creator.
Yep.
Music with Tyler the Creator. He's been featured with Travis Scott, who I think is just some of the worst rap ever, but most people disagree. And then he's been featured with Drake, and that's not. I mean, that's
It's not
a
us.
top of the list of that kind of stuff. That's huge.
It is.
For almost 5 million listeners a month on Spotify. A quick like categorization was alt hip hop, rap rock. I didn't hear that when I did a quick listen. I would not have thought alt hip hop. Well, maybe I would think alt hip hop, but rap rock, I'm not sure.
I liked what I heard. I think it modern man, modern jam. But I also looked up some of the lyrics, and it's kind of one of those. I've wondered when this was going to start happening. Like the lyrics, baby, please get off the gram. I like you better in the stands. I upgrade my only fan. It do or don't need a cam. I wondered when things like that were going to start finding their way into lyrics, like Instagram and all this stuff.
Is it unfair to say that the popularity of like the Megan Thee Stallions and those types might be bringing a lot of that out? It seems like I've heard that in some of her music. That resonates with children. When I say children, I mean like 21-year-olds. I mean like really young people.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
when you're singing,
it's their universe.
when you're singing about the gram, it used to be the Insta. I think
Right.
that's like old people talk now. Whatever. I mean, Instagram. Is it that difficult to say just what it is? But or IG. I think that stuff resonates because you don't have to think about it. We're not going to have a podcast talking about. I wonder what that song's about.
Right.
Uh,
No, it's their universe, and knowing full well this is you kids get off my lawn conversation.
well,
That's this whole
yeah,
show,
we're a
pretty
show.
much.
We're a show hosted by middle-aged men who are a little bit cooler than the normal middle-aged men. We'll just at least say that.
That's my point, and I'm not trying to. I mean, it is what it is, and I like the music. I could listen to his stuff. It's just, again, it goes back to the thing we talked about a minute ago with Half Moon Run. It doesn't have to connect with me.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
As a matter of fact, it'd be odd if it did.
Correct. Good point. So I liked it. Will I go see it? Maybe. just because I like kind of checking out what's going on. I have no problem walking up on something and saying, that ain't for me, but I get it.
Sure.
Uh, when I used, when I used to have to review shows for the paper, I only asked two questions. What's the artist trying to do? And are they doing it well? And then I was okay.
So
You know
at
what I
least you
mean?
had to understand the basis of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be for me.
Yeah, and of course
But I
the
liked it. I'm
schedule's
not
not
saying
out
this
yet.
isn't.
Some of this may to be dependent on schedule. If there's a conflict, somebody else may win out. But if it's a slot where, yeah, it's midday and you've got nothing else to do, yeah, we could walk over there and check it out.
I'm all about
Hmm.
it. I'm all about it. And like I've told this story many times. Our friend Mike Dewar and Denson in Camp Nut Butter, when EDM and the other, when they really switched over to EDM, Mike was like, I don't get it, man. What's with the EDM? Does it have a beginning, a middle, and an end? And I'm like, that's a great question.
Doesn't feel like
The
it.
answer's no.
Doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it. So it was like 2 a.m. He said, I said, come on, we got to go listen. And we walked over and, kids are in their rabbit suits and running around. And I'm listening. I like it. And the kids are looking over their shoulder at us. And I thought, well, they think we're cool. And then I realized they thought we were
No,
narcs.
Yeah.
They think you're here
Just
to
thought we
you're here to cause trouble.
Uh-huh.
Old guys. But,
Yeah, I mean the EDM evolution has been such an interesting thing to watch because it's been happening since the 90s. Rave culture became big then. I never really was involved with any of that. I wanted to be when I was quite young because I wanted to be rebellious, and that's what people were doing.
Mhm.
And I had parental supervision just enough not to let me do those things. And then by the time I got old enough to make those decisions for myself, I had long realized my life for the Thrill Kill Cult kids
Right.
out there. If you're
Right.
probably not familiar with that band, but I would bet would be many EDM acts would say that Thrill Kill Cult would be, probably top of their legendary list of that kind of music. Drugs and wild noise. I mean, I hate to be so simplistic about it, and try to corner. I don't want EDM fans, jam band fans don't like being cornered as just stoner drug users who go
Sure.
listen to not because
Mhm.
I'm a jam band guy. So I don't mean to do that, but sorry, that's kind of what a lot of it is. And also jam band community. Sorry, that's what a lot of it is. But boy, it's popular. So
No, I think I remember telling Dewar Mike at that time. I mean, their parents hate it, so it's their thing. I mean,
their parents
it's
really hate it.
right, and that's the reason. So, all right, one more time. Let's do one more spin it.
Spin the wheel.
Oh, this will be fun. Neal Francis.
Which one?
Which one? Which one?
This is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Isn't this fun? I don't know. I have to believe Steven, again, going back to Brian Benson and Steven. God love him. This is genius.
They had to know, it didn't accidentally
Oh,
fall this way.
this was no mistake.
It's hilarious. There are 2 Neal Francis. I'm not even going to try to write it. So we're going to talk about both of them. But kudos to those guys for booking Neal Francis and Neal Francis. So what do we think?
Well, I'll start with first of all, I quickly did a search because I was trying to figure out the most popular, like famous Neals, how they spell their names, and it quickly from Neil deGrasse Tyson to Neil Armstrong to Neil Young, they all spell it Neil. The first one that I'm going to reference is Neal Neal, and I didn't quickly see a famous name that spelled his name that way. Not that that looks odd to me or anything, but Neal Francis it says outside that's a Thursday performance night. It says Neal Francis and then apostrophe, so possessive of Francis Comes Alive. which is
which
that's
is
Nice.
pretty neat. I like that
Nice. Yeah,
play
yeah,
on
good reference.
Frampton.
so
Frampton
not
comes alive.
Frampton, Francis. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I quickly did a listen, and this was a very quick listen, I love it. I
Yeah.
love the Neal Francis. The first two songs, I was like, "This
Can't
is
Stop the
me."
Rain. Can't
Yeah,
Stop
that,
the Rain.
and
Not
then
the Ann Peoples, not the David Ruffin. I Can't Stop the Rain song, because I had to, when I saw that title, I was like, I'm familiar,
yeah,
but
"Can't
not the
Stop the
one.
Rain," this time, and then "Changes" parts 1 and 2 were
Yep.
the most popular listens, and that's where I started. And I was just immediately hooked because it did have that rock and
Yeah.
roll boom, just kind of get you. I man, if I didn't have plans on Thursday, which this year I will be there Thursday because I want to see what Pretty Lights on the main stage is, just to see what that looks like. That's like I've skipped Thursday in the last couple of years. I won't be skipping Thursday because of Pretty Lights
Good.
in particular. But Neal Francis Comes Alive in 2 minutes. You got a new fan. But he's
Yeah.
still very much on the up and comer. 152,000 listeners a month. That's not a whole lot. Again, relative, but to a lot of these that we're talking about, I'll just start there. I love Neal Francis, Neal.
I'm with you. 100%. 100%. And that's what we love about Thursday. And that's what we love about Bonnaroulette.
Well, that's
Would
where
have
I found
never.
that's where I found Courtney Barnett in 2015.
Absolutely. That was the
Speaking of our buddy
best.
Brad, founder of the show, he told me, and Brad, for anybody who's not around, bounce around, doesn't get all the inside joke stuff. I mean, just murders me on a regular basis for all this stuff that he doesn't even believe half of it. It's just it's just funny to him. But he knows my taste. He knows what I like, and he doesn't steer me in a direction unless he knows that it's going to be something. And he told me that in 2015.
Yeah.
It was
That show was
It was
amazing.
a Thursday. It was go to Courtney Barnett.
That was.
And I usually roll my eye, whatever, Brad.
Yeah.
Back then I didn't, not as much these days. And boy, she's the love of my life. Jade Bird and Courtney Love are the loves of my life. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked.
No,
As far as
because I think it's important, because that's the point of this show, and that's the point of the festival.
yeah,
I mean, you would have never found Courtney Barnett.
No.
I'm the same. That show was epic.
no, just some young lady playing guitar that's a little noisy at times with kind of a bad haircut. I probably wouldn't have stopped and listened, depending on the situation, but it was one of my favorite shows of the last
And it
10
was a
years or
Thursday
so.
list. You're like, I don't care. I don't
Hey, I
know anybody
know.
on this.
I've been drinking all day.
I'm here. It's Bonnaroo.
I've already been here for 2 days.
She didn't even have blue hair.
Exactly.
Yeah, didn't even have blue hair, not green
But
or orange either.
We talk about it to this day, and I'm glad I'm with you with Neal Francis. I think it's my reaction, was the same as yours. Immediate love. I love this. So.
And so we're talking about Francis with an I in the last name Francis, Neal Francis. But now the other Neal
is a DJ.
Yeah. Wasn't nearly as impressed, cared at all about that. It's not my thing as much. But let's, again, using Spotify as the barometer, 4 million monthly listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, back to what we're talking about, how of what's popular and what works. And I don't know where this Neal falls. I'll look at it as we talk about it here on the list. But he is not Thursday. It's
no, I think it's later.
It's
like
Saturday.
It's
Saturday.
They should have put him on
So
the same day.
Probably a 10.
That would have been hilarious. Yeah.
Maybe Neal shows up on Saturday and plays with Neal, but I doubt it.
See, I don't know. I pulled this Billboard piece about it last week, and it was really more about just the fact that the names are that similar, not as much about the bands having any connection. I don't really think they hardly even know each
No,
other
no. I think
or
it's just people
anything.
like us trying to make something
Mhm.
out of.
Yeah.
But I hope, I have to believe Steven and Bryan knew, because I'm going to give them credit because I think it's hilarious.
I do too. I mean, if nothing else, yeah. I mean, it's something to talk about, and that's half the battle
Well,
sometimes.
in the
All
same
right.
concept, there's 2 mics this year. There's a mic and there's a mic with a period. And I don't think they ended up on the wheel,
I
but
wondered what you were talking about on the thread. We were talking
yeah.
mics.
Mhm.
I didn't see that. Mike with
Yeah.
a period. I see Mike on Saturday, and and there's Mike
Mic
period
period.
on Friday.
Yes.
What is going on? What are we doing? I mean, this article, actually, some stuff I already knew. They'd start talking about how David Bowie changed his name because of the Davy Jones from the Monkees and all
Mhm.
that stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
most people who know rock history are aware of that. I did not know that in the 60s there was a band in uh, somewhere in England called Nirvana that didn't have any real career, but they did initially use that name, and there was a little bit of struggle on that initially. I'm sure they worked it out legally. I didn't. I just skimmed through it, but so they were going through and naming over the years people who had conflicts, and the conflict usually was resolved by, let's completely change the name of what we're doing
Mhm.
to not confuse. And it appears we've changed. Speaking of all the change, we've moved on into the first quarter of the 21st century into, let's not change the name. Let's make it damn near exactly the same, except change one
Yeah.
tiny thing
Yeah.
that saves us from copyright and trademark, and let's confuse them on purpose. It's
Yeah,
almost what
it's
it
Yeah.
almost a
seems like.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's put
Mike
an ampersand or
Mhm.
something in there.
Mike
Yeah.
or Mike period. I've got to listen to that later on today. It's not on the wheel, but I'll have to listen to it.
All right. So good show. That's a lot of fun. We've got tickets to give away. What I think we want to do is use Bonnaroulette as a method. So let me find it again real quick. We're going to do similar to what we did last year. We actually, Taco, who is our um, our resident nerd, sets all this kind of stuff up, and I mean that with love. Set us up with a phone number, 423-667-7877. 423-667-7877. Call and tell us which band you think we should check out. Kind of similar to this Bonnaroulette. The whole idea is discovery. We're going to do it again because there's a bunch of bands on this
Yeah,
list we've
Yeah. Oh,
never
yeah.
I actually, when you first mentioned, even on the show earlier, and as was brought up, because I'm still new with you guys on a regular basis, and I mean, we don't make it up as we go, but we kind of do. And I was thinking, want to do this again? I mean, I'm not sure we want to do this again.
Heck yeah.
And the more I look at this, and the more I spend on it, just it wasn't even that long yesterday. Made my playlist. I started my playlist. I'm going to add to it as time goes on, and I started listening to it yesterday. And the Cigarettes After Sex would pop up. The Beaches were one that I was already a little familiar with the name, and I knew that it was music that I'd kind of like. I threw some of that on the playlist, and I had it rolling yesterday, and I was like, man, I kind of can't wait for June all of a sudden. And
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
other day, I didn't really
That's
care
the
all
fun.
that much.
That's the whole point of the show.
And
And
I'd like
so
to keep that
yeah.
going, and until someone makes me do it, I'm probably not going to do it.
No, so that's the point. So if you're listening and you want to win 2 tickets with GA
These are going to be
plus
GA plus.
passes,
Yeah.
right?
And that comes with
With
camping, right?
camping. So call that number, 423-667-7877. Tell us which band we should check out. We're not interested. Well, I mean, that's so random. I started to say we're not interested in the one we should know about, because who
I
who
mean, I
knows what we
guess
should already know about,
if
but we
that's what
want,
you
it's
want
the
to do, but
discovery. Yeah, it's the discovery. So tell us about somebody we've maybe never heard of, and we'll put you on the wheel, so to speak. And some weeks from now, we'll spin the wheel, and maybe your name will pop up, and you can win 2 tickets. So um, That's how we're going to
Yeah.
give them
And if
away.
you've already got tickets, if you know somebody who wants to go, send this episode to them, share, and maybe get them on board.
Yeah, we'll
Along,
get that phone number out there too. I love incorporating the phone calls. I love incorporating into this kind of medium, into this kind of show idea, other
yeah,
people's voices, other people's thoughts, and that's again, I do want to quickly thank, and I went through it and made a few comments on our last video about the vibe of the festival potentially changing with the new
Oh
ticket
yeah, yeah.
options of 1 and 2 days, and I had asked people to respond, and I looks like you more than normal did, and thank you for that, because I mean it was a legitimate question. I mean it's nice to have interaction. It helps for the show, but it was less about that, or wasn't at all about that for me. I was curious, and I still am, to know more and more about what you guys think changes for better or worse. Not
right.
the what stage, this. We all know what those are like. We all get the only question every year is the which stage going to be bad this year or not. Like
Hmm.
everywhere else, we know what we're getting ourselves into.
Right.
So the vibe. So I appreciate anybody who took time out of the
Yeah, I'm
day to
glad you
make a
mentioned that
comment
because
about that.
speaking of comments and interacting, maybe we ought to do another live show one day and just take questions and answer in real time, and then have that kind of interaction as far as like a live show would go. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
that'd be fun.
Absolutely. So we're going to do that. What other business, Russ? I know we had a bunch of things that we talked
I
about.
think we're going to link a Spotify playlist in the description and
Oh
the
yeah,
show notes of all these bands that we
yeah.
just went through with Bonnaroulette. So, if you want to jump on the discovery with us, you can listen to the playlist and kind of get familiar yourself.
I think what we will do along those lines is add to it, maybe.
Yes. Hmm.
Because we could certainly, we've done it in the past where all three of us have created our own playlist, and we can do that, and we'll add to it, so it's an ongoing thing as we
And
discover
as yeah,
new
as
things. I
people
think
call in
that's the
with
best.
recommendations, I mean, we can definitely add them to
Yeah,
the playlist too.
for
Yeah.
sure. But what I like too is, and Bryan, I think, and you get it. It's not just listening to the sounds; it's doing the research and finding out. Oh, these guys are from Canada, or these guys are connected to television,
Hmm.
or whatever.
It
That's
just
what's
gives
fun.
a
Yeah,
little bit more layer to it to
yeah, it's
me. I
fun.
mean, I've got to be talked into some things a lot of the times, and I mean, we've all dealt with this, and Barry, you the most because you've been in this industry longer than any of us. Hey, you got to check this out.
Hmm.
Hey, you got to listen to my friend's band.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to watch this YouTube
How many
video.
times have we all been
Hey,
heard that?
here,
Yeah.
hey,
Hmm.
check this. Look at
Right.
this on my phone.
Yeah.
Look at this on my phone.
Right.
No, God,
Well,
don't stop. Enough. Like you, like that gets old. But when you start to learn more and you understand more and you layer it more and you know that this band might be from an area you're familiar with, or they're compared to a band that you recognize, okay, ding.
yes.
I'll take an extra little glance at that. Yeah,
Not
sure.
just that, but I've said it over and over. Everybody started somewhere. The
Yeah.
Hmm.
Beatles, the Beatles were nobody at some point. Uh, so,
Yeah,
don't
you got
wait. You don't have to wait until, they're suddenly huge to discover a really good band. And that's the point to me. I
very
to me it
true.
to me the fun part is being like, God dang, I saw those guys when there were 10 of us.
Yeah.
And that's what Bonnaroo has been great at over the
Yeah.
years.
Correct.
What I find interesting, though, this is just a quick side note before we get out of here, is, uh, and I did put them on my recommendations playlist because I like them. The band Milky Chance, they first played, and I think they were pretty brand new, around 17, if I remember, and they were on they were on What? And it was an early day, and my favorite place in the world is the What stage at 4 o'clock. I mean, the sun killing you. Take that variable out because that obviously sucks.
Yeah.
But I mean, just for a music experience, because it's not too crowded. It's the best sounding stage in the world. I always say that.
Yeah.
I haven't been to every stage in the world, but I believe it. And they played a 4 or 5 o'clock set. It was awesome. And then now I see them like on this year's Sunday, second from the bottom. So rather than working their way up the set, they've kind of fallen down. I don't know what that
Sorry.
means. I just means it's just another way of the evolution of ebbs and flows of the music industry. So
yeah. All right, guys. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Worked out better than I hoped, and we're gonna do it again. And thank you guys for listening. Thanks to Consequence. Like and subscribe and do all that stuff.
And call our number, and you might win tickets.
Please call that number 423-667-7877. Peace.
Consequence Podcast Network.